Welcome to another episode of Die Tiefenkenner. In today's episode, we explore the fascinating intersection between cultures and minds, a journey that takes us deep into the heart of two psychological worlds. Our title, East Meets West: How Asian Societies Are Embracing Western Psychology. Over the next 40 minutes, we'll take a reflective walk through the ways in which Asian societies, rich with their own ancient philosophies, are now engaging with Western psychological models. We'll uncover not only how these ideas are being received, but also how they are being reshaped, localized, and sometimes even resisted. We'll look at therapy, mental health stigma, mindfulness, education, and the influence of globalized media. But more importantly, we'll ask, when a culture adopts an idea from another, what is gained and what might be lost? Let's begin. To understand how Asian societies are embracing Western psychology, we need to first look at what distinguishes the two traditions. Western psychology, especially since the 20th century, has focused heavily on the individual. Ideas rooted in the Enlightenment, in thinkers like Descartes and Freud, who believed in a self that is distinct, conscious, and in need of expression and understanding. Terms like self-esteem, self-actualization, and individual therapy reflect this worldview. It's a psychology that often assumes people want to stand apart, define their identity, and control their internal world. In contrast, traditional Asian perspectives rooted in Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism, and collectivist cultural values see the self as interconnected, fluid, and embedded within family, society, and nature. Rather than self-expression, harmony is emphasized. Rather than emotional analysis, emotional regulation is practiced. And where the West sees psychological struggle as a signal to speak out, many Asian cultures view silence and endurance as virtues. These aren't merely different beliefs. They shape entire approaches to suffering, healing, and human growth. Let's talk about therapy, the space where psychology becomes deeply personal. In countries like Japan and South Korea, psychotherapy used to be rare, even taboo. Seeking help was sometimes seen as a sign of weakness or a family failure. But this has been shifting. More young people today are open to therapy, and mental health apps and platforms are on the rise. Still, the Western model of talk therapy doesn't always translate easily. Take, for example, the concept of emotional disclosure, the idea that talking about your trauma or your pain is healing. In Western models, especially psychodynamic therapy, this is central. But in many Asian cultures, emotional restraint is a sign of maturity and respect. Speaking openly about problems, especially family issues, can feel dishonorable or even dangerous. So, what happens? Many Asian therapists trained in the West are now adapting therapeutic models. For instance, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, originally developed in the US, is being reshaped into culturally sensitive CBT, where therapists blend structured cognitive work with mindfulness, storytelling, or values rooted in Confucian ethics. In China, some therapists incorporate Taoist ideas about balance and non-resistance. In India, yoga and Ayurveda are integrated into psychological well-being. In Southeast Asia, indigenous healing rituals and communal ceremonies are sometimes blended with counseling techniques. Rather than copying Western psychology outright, what we're seeing is a hybrid form, something new, born at the crossroads of cultures. Let's now turn to schools and media, two forces that shape public consciousness. Over the last few decades, psychology has entered classrooms across Asia. In Singapore, students are taught emotional regulation in early education. In South Korea, psychology has become a popular university major. And in countries like the Philippines and Thailand, mental health awareness campaigns are now part of national policy. Meanwhile, media, from Netflix dramas to YouTube influencers, has been instrumental in changing attitudes. Shows that depict therapy, characters with depression, or psychologists as main protagonists have helped destigmatize mental health topics. K-dramas like It's Okay to Not Be Okay or Japanese films that explore inner life subtly introduce audiences to psychological narratives, sometimes more effectively than textbooks can. And on social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram, Asian mental health advocates are emerging in large numbers. They speak openly about anxiety, trauma, ADHD, using Western terminology but filtered through local experience. Education and media have created a kind of feedback loop, normalizing the language of therapy, making it accessible, even trendy. But is this enough? Despite all this progress, tension remains. One major issue is the cultural dissonance that arises when Western psychology is applied without adaptation. Concepts like self-love or boundaries can feel alien or even selfish in cultures where family duty and group harmony are paramount. Another problem is the dominance of English language research. Most global psychological studies are based on weird populations, that is, Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic societies. This means Asian realities are often underrepresented or misunderstood in the global field. There's also concern about pathologizing cultural behavior. For example, a child's quietness in class may be viewed as social anxiety in one framework, but as respectfulness in another. Are we labeling cultural values as mental illness? This has led to a growing movement within Asia to reclaim and reinterpret psychology on their own terms, integrating Buddhist psychology, Confucian ethics, and local wisdom into mental health frameworks. So while Western psychology has offered language and structure, the real work today is about balance, integrating global science without erasing local soul. Ironically, one of the most successful psychological exports from East to West is now coming full circle: mindfulness. Originally rooted in Buddhist and Hindu traditions, mindfulness was rebranded by Western psychologists like John Kabat-Zinn as a secular tool for stress reduction. It became popular in therapy, corporate training, schools, and wellness apps. Today, many Asian societies are reintroducing mindfulness, not as ancient spirituality, but as modern psychological intervention. Schools in Thailand, hospitals in Japan, workplaces in Vietnam, all are using mindfulness in workshops, therapy, and coaching. This is a fascinating moment. The East receives back what it once gave, now repackaged through Western psychology and supported by neuroscience. And once again, it shows how ideas evolve as they travel, not in straight lines, but in spirals. So, where is all this heading? In the coming years, we can expect even deeper integration of Western psychological models into Asian society, but with increasing cultural customization. We will likely see more indigenous research, more Asian-led publications, and more culturally grounded therapy training programs. We'll see therapists trained in both Western models and traditional wisdom. And perhaps most importantly, we'll see a shift in the collective mindset from stigma to acceptance, from silence to dialogue. But we should also be cautious. Mental health is not a fashion trend. It's not about adopting buzzwords or copying Western methods uncritically. It's about listening to people's lived experiences, respecting cultural contexts, and creating healing spaces that feel authentic. Psychology is not one size fits all. It's a living conversation between science and culture, between East and West, and between each person and their inner world. Thank you for joining me on this reflective journey through the evolving world of psychology in Asia. The embrace of Western psychological models by Asian societies is not just a cultural borrowing, it's a dynamic reimagining of what it means to be human. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to follow Die Tiefenkenner. And if you have thoughts, questions, or stories about mental health across cultures, feel free to share them with us. Until next time, stay curious and take care of your mind wherever you are in the world.